You begin by letting your breath settle into a slow, steady rhythm, as if each inhale smooths the edges of the room around you and each exhale softens the world's sharpness. In this quiet, you notice how space seems to loosen, not in any dramatic way, but like fabric relaxing after being stretched. You feel the familiar rules of your day release their hold, making room for something gentler to welcome the hush beneath ordinary motion that waits quietly for you now here. You sense the air settling around you, as though the room itself is exhaling in agreement with your slowing thoughts. In this softened space, you begin to imagine the tiny foundations of the universe, the particles that flicker within every breath. They do not move with certainty but with possibility, weaving paths shaped by chance. You let yourself drift with them, following their gentle wanderings as if they carry you inward into the quiet center where their soft motions begin to teach you. You picture a single particle, not as a tiny bead but as a delicate shimmer, a spread-out cloud that leans toward many places at once. It seems to hover on the edge of being here and not here, like a thought you almost remember. You follow its presence as it stretches toward the unseen, guided not by force but by the soft math of probability. In its uncertainty, you find a strange, restful clarity that settles into your mind like a slow closing pedal. As you rest with this shimmering particle, you start to sense how space itself feels less rigid. It does not behave like a fixed container but more like a field of invitations, allowing each particle to explore subtle directions. You imagine these tiny travelers drifting not along straight lines but through shifting landscapes shaped by waves. In their wandering, you notice a softness in reality, a flexibility hidden beneath the surface you once believed unyielding even though it always felt solid to you. You breathe in again, and the air feels different, as if it carries the memory of these shifting landscapes. You picture your own body as part of this quantum field, each atom humming with its own gentle cloud of possibility. Nothing inside you is truly still, each part sways with the rhythms of countless unseen motions. As you sense this, you relax more deeply, knowing movement can be quiet, almost silent, like a tide turning beneath moonlight that guides your body into rest. You imagine time slowing, not stopping, but stretching like warm taffy, giving you room to notice the faint, almost musical flow within every particle. Each one seems to pulse with its own rhythm, a whisper of probability leaning gently across space. You drift with these pulses, feeling how they soften the boundaries you once assumed were firm. In this loosened world, you sense the beginnings of a question forming, subtle but persistent as if it waits patiently for your attention to turn toward. You allow that question to hover without shaping it into words. Instead, it drifts like a soft current beneath thought, leading you deeper into the story of uncertainty. You imagine each particle not choosing a path but being gently carried by mathematical waves that rise and fall like breath. The unpredictability feels welcoming rather than chaotic, a reminder that not everything must be known to be trusted. You follow this feeling, letting it guide your awareness into a quieter place within you now. As your awareness settles, you imagine approaching a thin, invisible boundary, something like the edge of a dream where shapes blur and meanings shift. This boundary feels gentle, almost warm, as though it invites exploration without asking anything of you. You picture a particle nearing this boundary too, not hesitating, simply existing in a state of almost being there. It presses softly against the limit, as if waiting for space itself to soften a little more so that its next gentle move can unfold naturally. You sense how this boundary resembles the unspoken edges of your own thoughts, the places where ideas waver before forming. In the same way, the particle lingers at the threshold, its presence smeared like watercolor across space. You breathe with it, feeling how probability stretches beyond the visible. This stretching feels tender, like the moment before dawn when light hints at arrival. You realize that what seems like emptiness often holds quiet potential waiting for your attention to settle into its stillness fully. Sitting with this potential, you imagine space not as emptiness but as a cradle for all these delicate possibilities. Each particle becomes a reminder that the world is built from softness as much as solidity. You feel this truth settle into your body, loosening something deep in your chest. As the feeling expands, the boundary before you seems to glow faintly, shimmering like heat above a road. The shimmer invites you to look closer, without fear or any need to understand immediately why. You notice that the shimmer doesn't block you, it simply marks the place where certainty fades into possibility. This boundary is neither wall nor gateway but something gentler, like the transition between waking and sleeping. Your breath slows as you sense the particle easing forward, its cloud-like presence brushing the boundary as though testing its weight. You feel the moment stretch, spacious and unhurried, inviting you to rest inside the softness of not knowing what might unfold just beyond your current reach now. As you rest in this expanded quiet, you sense that space itself feels more like a suggestion than a rule. The particle seems to sense it too, lingering with patient confidence, as though something ahead is already welcoming it. You imagine the boundary loosening further, its shimmer thinning like fog touched by morning light. You breathe into this loosening, feeling your own thoughts become lighter, more permeable, more willing to drift toward possibility as your mind leans gently into the next quiet question. You begin to wonder how a boundary so soft could still guide the shapes of matter. This wondering feels calm, like watching ripples circle outward on still water. You imagine the particle sensing the same gentle puzzle, its presence wavering across the boundary as though listening for a deeper rhythm. You stay with this moment, noticing how curiosity can feel restful when it carries no demand. The shimmer glows faintly, as if answering without words that you are invited to follow even now. You let that invitation settle into your awareness, gentle as a hand resting lightly on your shoulder. The particle shifts again, not by choice but by the quiet mathematics that guide all motion. You imagine those rules as soft winds shaping a field of grass, bending each blade without breaking it. The particle leans further into possibility, and you feel yourself leaning with it, drawn toward the mystery of what lies just beyond the shimmer waiting with its own gentle patience for you. You breathe once more, letting the shimmer fill your vision like a quiet horizon. You sense that the particle is close to crossing, not by force but by the natural softness of the world at this scale. The thought steadies you, reminding you that even walls can loosen. You rest in this awareness, feeling the moment expand around you. And as the boundary softens further, you begin to wonder what whispers might wait on the other side when a barrier speaks instead of. Let yourself drift closer now. You begin this chapter as though stepping into a room made of quiet breath, a place where everything feels thinner, gentler, and more willing to bend toward curiosity. Around you, the atmosphere softens into a pale hush, and even your thoughts slow into a drifting pattern, like leaves circling in a shallow current. In this calmness, you notice the faint outline of a barrier before you, not solid or sharp, but wavering, almost shy. It pulses gently, as though exhaling a secret you were just beginning to hear. You sense that this boundary is not meant to push you back, instead, it leans forward, inviting your attention. It feels like a threshold woven from stories, a place where energy changes shape, telling you something through whispers rather than commands. As you draw nearer, the barrier reveals itself not through resistance but through rhythm. It seems to hum softly, a vibration that rises and falls like a breath caught between thoughts. You imagine the barrier as a hill too gentle to climb yet too present to ignore, a place where a particle pauses, not out of hesitation but because the universe gives it a moment to listen. You sense how energy gathers here, pooling like water at the base of a stone, forming a quiet reservoir of possibility. The barrier's presence feels almost maternal, guiding rather than blocking, shaping rather than stopping. It does not ask you to turn away, instead, it asks you to be still long enough to hear how the world rearranges itself at its delicate edges. You allow yourself to linger in this stillness, noticing how the whispering barrier seems to reshape your understanding of boundaries. It flickers like candlelight in a draught, brightening and dimming as if it is thinking. You imagine the particle standing before such a barrier, its waves stretching forward like the shadow of a hand reaching toward warm glass. There is no urgency, only a soft negotiation between presence and possibility. The barrier does not shout its rules, it barely gestures. And yet, those gestures shape the paths a particle may take. You breathe into this realization, sensing your own thoughts ripple in response. The barrier feels less like an obstacle and more like a storyteller, murmuring tales of what energy can and cannot become at a given moment. With each breath, you sense the texture of the barrier more clearly, as though it is woven from countless tiny fluctuations. These fluctuations feel like whispers layered upon whispers, each carrying a subtle message about the flow of energy. You picture them as gentle ripples spreading across a still pond, overlapping but never colliding harshly. As you drift deeper into this image, you realize how the barrier guides the particle's behavior without ever touching it. The guidance feels like a suggestion rather than a rule, a gentle nudge offered by the mathematics of quantum motion. You feel the elegance of this system, the way complexity becomes softness when viewed at the smallest scales. And in this softness, you sense how the barrier invites both patience and curiosity. You let your mind drift toward the concept of energy itself, imagining it not as a rigid number but as a kind of story the particle carries. Each particle moves with a certain amount of energy, like a traveler holding a lantern whose brightness determines how far it may walk. When it reaches the whispering barrier, the lantern's glow falters slightly, illuminating only part of the path ahead. You sense how this dimming shapes what the particle can do, limiting its climb over the barrier while still allowing it to approach. The gentleness of this limit feels reassuring, like a boundary set not to confine but to offer clarity. You breathe with this thought, realizing how often constraints simply guide movement instead of ending it. As you linger with this idea, you imagine the barrier whispering to the particle in a voice made of probabilities. The whisper carries no command, it merely describes the landscape that lies ahead. You picture this landscape as a gentle slope of likelihoods, some high, some low, each shaping the particle's possible futures. The more you imagine this, the more you feel the comfort of uncertainty, a softness in knowing that outcomes unfold not from force but from the quiet shaping of chance. The barrier seems almost kind in this light, offering guidance rather than obstruction. You breathe slowly and let this kindness settle into your body, noticing how your own decisions sometimes arise in similar ways, through quiet probabilities rather than firm demands. You drift deeper now into the idea of the whispering barrier as a threshold of change. You picture the particle approaching it again, its waves stretching and thinning as though brushing against a soft curtain. The curtain trembles as the particle nears, responding not to touch but to presence. You sense how the particle's energy shapes this interaction, how the barrier responds like a membrane tuned to the faintest vibration. You breathe into this image and feel how the barrier gently redirects the particle, encouraging it to reflect or linger, but never forcing it to stop. The world feels tender here, full of choices that grow from subtle influences. And you realize how often your own life shifts in similar ways, responding to soft forces rather than sharp commands. As you rest with this understanding, you sense how deeply this whispering barrier belongs to the quantum world, where rules dissolve into tendencies and outcomes into shimmering fields of maybe. You feel the beauty of this, the way uncertainty becomes a soft music guiding the smallest pieces of reality. You imagine the particle pausing once more at the barrier, its wave gently pressing forward as though asking permission to continue. The barrier answers not with yes or no, but with degrees of possibility. You breathe slowly, letting this gradient of responses wash through you. It feels like a reminder that movement doesn't always require certainty, sometimes it simply requires readiness. And in this readiness, something new begins to take shape, quiet and promising. You drift a little further, imagining now the particle encountering the barrier repeatedly, each approach a new conversation. Sometimes it reflects, drifting back like a soft echo. Sometimes it lingers, stretching its waves so thin that possibility itself seems to shimmer. And sometimes, though it lacks the energy to climb over, it presses close enough that a tiny part of its wave leaks through, exploring the space beyond. This moment feels delicate, like watching light slip through a narrow gap. You sense the significance of this. The barrier is not rigid but permeable in subtle ways. It holds its shape while still allowing for quiet surprises. You breathe into this thought, noticing the comfort in knowing that even obstacles have edges where softness accumulates. You rest with this realization, letting the whispering barrier become a symbol of transitions in your own life. You imagine how often you approach the edges of change with the same gentle uncertainty, carrying just enough energy to press close but not quite enough to cross. And yet, like the particle, some part of you reaches forward, exploring the unknown with quiet courage. You breathe into this parallel, feeling how the barrier both holds you and prepares you. Its whispers feel like guidance, telling you that movement comes in many forms, not all of them visible. You linger in this thought, sensing how the barrier softens further, as though opening a passage not through force but through invitation. And in that invitation, something begins to shift. You breathe once more, sensing the barrier's whisper gather into a question about where the particle might drift next, and you follow that wandering into the quiet space where an idea begins to glow for you. You begin by imagining the shape of a wall not as a solid slab, but as a slow dissolving mist that hovers between one possibility and another. You feel the quiet around you deepen as you settle into the idea that barriers in the quantum world rarely behave the way walls in your waking life do. They soften, blur, and breathe with uncertainty. You picture this wall shimmering at its edges, like morning fog touched by pale light, inviting you to lean closer. In this gentle haze, you sense a boundary that seems to know you. As you drift deeper into this image, you notice how the wall does not end abruptly, instead it tapers into a soft gradient, a zone where certainty dissolves into possibility. You imagine a particle moving toward this fading boundary, its presence spread out like a delicate cloud. It does not walk up to the wall and stop. Instead, it enters the region where location loses its sharpness. You breathe slowly and imagine your own thoughts thinning in the same way, becoming lighter with each gentle exhale. You picture the particle's wave function, not as a rigid line but as a drifting pattern of possibilities spreading ahead of it. The closer it moves to the soft edge of the wall, the more its presence extends into the space beyond, as though curiosity itself shapes its reach. You breathe with this imagery, feeling how your awareness can also expand past your immediate boundaries. The wall seems less like an ending now and more like a suggestion, a gentle reminder that even limits can loosen under the right conditions. As you linger at the wall's softening edge, you begin to sense how quantum objects behave like travelers moving through shifting fog rather than solid terrain. The particle does not collide with the boundary, it simply fades into the region where its presence tapers but never truly stops. You picture this tapering as a long, delicate tail, stretching like a whispered thought. It comforts you to imagine movement defined not by abrupt endings but by gentle transitions, as if the universe prefers softness where you expect hardness. You drift deeper into this picture, imagining the particle's amplitude thinning as it approaches the wall. Amplitude, in this gentle storytelling, feels like the brightness of a lantern carried by a wanderer. As the particle nears the boundary, its lantern glows more faintly, not because it is weaker, but because the landscape absorbs its light. You see how the glow continues past the wall, dim but real. This faint continuation shows you that edges in the quantum world do not silence a traveler, they simply soften its presence into a further, quieter reach. With this image in mind, you allow the wall to shift again, becoming less like an object and more like a transition zone. You imagine running your hand through this shimmering region and feeling nothing solid, only a gradual thinning of certainty. The particle feels this too, responding to the gradient rather than any abrupt stop. You sense how gently the quantum world arranges its boundaries, always preferring gradients over cliffs. In this realization, something inside you relaxes, as though softness has become a law you can trust. You picture the particle spreading a little farther, its wave function thinning smoothly into the barrier. This thinning feels like a sigh, a gentle release of tension. You imagine how such spreading reveals that the particle's presence cannot be sharply contained, even when you draw a boundary around it. Instead, it leaks into whatever space is near, like fragrance drifting beyond the rim of an open jar. This image brings a soft comfort, reminding you that presence can extend without force, simply by existing with ease near the edges of change. You sit with this thought, breathing slowly, letting the blurred boundary feel familiar. You imagine how the particle is neither in the wall nor fully before it, but partially both, woven into the zone where separation fades. The overlap feels gentle, like two colors blending at the edge of a watercolor wash. You sense how quantum behavior prefers these blends, these regions where being is a matter of degree. As you picture it, your own inner boundaries begin to feel just a little more spacious, a little more forgiving. You drift deeper into the science wrapped in softness, noticing how the particle's partial presence beyond the wall marks the beginning of tunneling. It has not crossed yet, but it has reached into the forbidden region with a kind of quiet courage. You picture this reach as the first step of a long exhale. You sense that the particle is responding not to command but to possibility, stretching into what seems out of reach. This teaches you something tender. Even the smallest things explore beyond what they appear able to touch. You breathe into this realization, sensing how the particle's delicate extension invites you to reconsider your own relationship with boundaries. You notice how often you imagine limits as absolute, when in truth they frequently hold gentle seams where one state can blend into another. The particle shows you this simply by existing as more than a point, more than a location. Its presence fades slowly, like twilight receding into night. You rest in this softness, sensing how the edge of the wall teaches you to welcome gradual transitions. As you drift in this gentle understanding, you begin to imagine the wall as a living boundary, one that responds subtly to the presence of anything that nears it. You picture its edges shimmering with continuous change, as though it breathes in rhythm with the particle's wave. You feel that rhythm in your own body, a slow oscillation that reflects how possibility moves through you. The wall is no longer a place of refusal but a region of conversation, a dialogue between what is known and what is allowed. You sense that this conversation is endless, unfolding in whispers too delicate to fully hear yet strong enough to shape the world beneath your awareness. You rest with this thought, letting the soft walls stretch across your imagination like a horizon made of breath. You picture the particle lingering there, neither stopped nor free, held in a quiet balance that feels strangely familiar. You sense how often your own life meets such thresholds, moments where you have not yet crossed but have already begun to lean beyond. The particle's presence comforts you, reminding you that gentle extensions lead naturally to gentle transitions. As you hold this image, you feel the wall's edge shimmering with promise, a hint that something waits on the other side. You breathe once more, settling into the stillness of almost crossing, and you begin to wonder what happens when possibility gathers enough softness to slip through, just as the particle prepares to do next, waiting for your quiet attention now here. You begin this chapter feeling as though you were standing in the quiet between two heartbeats, where the world holds still just long enough for something delicate to reveal itself. You sense the soft edge of the wall from before, that shimmering boundary where certainty fades into something gentler. But tonight, the barrier feels different. It is no longer a distant mist at the horizon of thought. It is close now, almost intimate, like a veil you can breathe on. You reach toward it, not to push or to test, but simply to feel the way it waits for you. The barrier does not resist. Instead, it seems to listen. You imagine a particle drifting towards such a boundary in the quantum world, a place where classical rules would declare, firmly, that it should stop. A place where energy would be measured, compared, and judged insufficient. And yet, at this scale, the universe whispers instead of shouts. The particle approaches, carrying its little lantern of energy, and the wall leans in, curious. You can feel that curiosity now, humming softly as though it recognizes your approach. You picture the particle not as a tiny bead, but as a wave, a cloud of gentle presence spread through space. As it moves toward the barrier, part of its wave presses into the edge, thinning but not disappearing. You imagine the barrier absorbing its presence like a warm sheet taking in the imprint of a resting body. The wave diminishes slowly, slipping into the forbidden region even though logic says it should not. But it does so without force, without breakage, without even a sound. It is a passage defined not by power but by probability. You breathe into this idea, letting the softness of it settle into you. The particle does not shatter the barrier. It does not dig through or smash its way across. It simply appears on the other side, as though probability opened a small, quiet door and let it pass. This is quantum tunneling, the gentle art of crossing without breaking anything at all. You imagine this process like a secret carried through still water, a shift so subtle that the world barely notices it happening. Yet it happens everywhere, in stars, in your cells, in every quiet corner of the universe. As you rest with this image, you begin to see how tunneling mirrors the movements of your own inner life. There are moments when you feel you cannot cross a boundary, an emotional wall, a mental block, a silent fear, and yet somehow you find yourself on the other side of it, not because you forced your way through, but because something within you softened just enough to slip beyond the barrier. You consider how often transitions unfold without a loud declaration. How often breakthroughs arrive as whispers rather than shouts. You picture the particle again, drifting forward, its waves stretching into the barrier like a long, delicate breath. In classical physics, the barrier would stop it completely. But in quantum mechanics, location is not absolute. Presence is not confined to a point. The particle's wave function unfurls into the wall, decaying gradually, like music fading into the night. You sense how gentle this decay is, not an ending, but a thinning. And somewhere within that thinning, there is still enough presence left to appear on the far side. You imagine placing your hand on the barrier now, feeling the subtle give beneath your fingertips. It is not firm. It is not rigid. It feels porous, like woven fabric stretched thin. You push slightly, not to force entry but simply to understand its texture. The barrier responds with a quiet hum, the kind that vibrates more in your chest than in your ears. You sense that the world at this scale is built from vibrations, from oscillations so delicate they exist between certainty and dream. You breathe in, allowing your own breath to match the rhythm of these hidden movements. As the particle continues its approach, you notice how the barrier never truly denies it. It simply shapes the probability of passing. You imagine these probabilities as shifting sands, forming hills and valleys that the particle's wave moves through. Where the sands are high, the wave diminishes. Where they flatten, the wave extends. This landscape of likelihoods guides the particle not with commands, but with suggestion. It is a soft map, one without borders drawn in ink, only shaded regions of maybe. You feel yourself leaning inward, drawn by the tenderness of this process. There is something profoundly calming about the idea that even barriers can hold softness within them. That transition does not always require force. That movement can happen invisibly, gently, guided by conditions rather than confrontation. You breathe slowly, letting this truth settle deeper. Crossing does not always mean effort. Sometimes it means alignment. The particle reaches the deepest part of the barrier now, where its wave is thinnest, most fragile. You imagine it stretching forward still, a faint whisper barely clinging to existence. Yet even this whisper holds possibility. The mathematics permits it. Reality permits it. And so, the wave continues, thinning, until a small part reaches the far side. You picture that moment quiet as a thought forming when the particle appears beyond the barrier. Not breaking, not forcing, simply arriving. You feel something inside you echo this soft arrival. A recognition that you, too, have moved through walls without noticing. Grown in ways so gradual that you only understood it by looking back. The particle becomes a mirror now, showing you how all things, even at scales too tiny to imagine, follow rhythms of change that honor gentleness. You breathe in, feeling the softness gather around your ribs like warm fabric. You imagine watching the particle settle on the far side of the barrier, its wave growing stronger again, brightening like a lantern rekindled. It moves forward now, free of the obstacle, as though nothing impossible had happened at all. You realize that the universe does not label its miracles. It simply allows them. Tunneling is one such allowance, a quiet bending of probability that grants a passage where none should be. You rest in this idea, sensing how it opens space inside your mind. A space where you can soften your own boundaries, where you can let possibilities leak gently into places you once believed closed. You imagine yourself as the particle, moving with grace rather than urgency, guided by the quiet currents beneath your thoughts. You feel something inside you easing, expanding, reaching into the unknown with a delicate confidence. You breathe again, long and slow, feeling the impulse that carries the particle through the barrier begin to stir in you as well. A sense that movement can be subtle. That transformation can be quiet. That walls can be soft. And in the hush of that realization, you find yourself wondering not just how the particle reaches the far side, but what happens in the moment just after, in the space where its quiet crossing gives way to the next unfolding whisper of the universe waiting gently to reveal itself. You begin by letting your awareness soften, as if the boundaries between yourself and the quiet world around you are slightly dissolving. You feel the gentle rhythm of your breath carrying you forward, guiding your mind toward the hidden landscapes of the quantum. Here, walls and obstacles are not always what they seem. Sometimes, the universe allows a particle to slip through a barrier, borrowing just enough energy to appear on the other side. You imagine this borrowing not as theft, but as a small, imperceptible gift granted by the rules of possibility themselves. You breathe slowly, letting your mind settle into this quiet generosity. In this world, time feels elastic. Moments stretch and contract, like water pulled by unseen tides. A particle may borrow energy for only a fraction of a second, enough to exist somewhere it should not be, yet never violating the greater order of things. You picture these borrowed moments as faint ripples moving through the fabric of reality. Each ripple is subtle, but each carries meaning. You sense the rhythm of these exchanges echoing in your own heartbeat, as though your body, too, participates in the gentle choreography of fleeting allowances. You visualize the particles as tiny lanterns flickering through the darkness, appearing and disappearing so quickly that it seems impossible to follow. These are virtual particles, popping into being from nothing and vanishing just as quickly. And yet in their brief existence, they ripple outward, nudging the space and matter around them. You feel your mind slowing to match their tempo, noticing how even the smallest, most ephemeral presences shape the vastness of the world. There is comfort here, in the universe's precision paired with generosity, a balance you can lean into as you drift further along your meditative journey. The idea of borrowing energy feels soft and tender when you picture it as a dance. The particle does not seize or demand, it only extends itself for a breath and then returns to its original state. You imagine these moments as invisible bridges, delicate arcs that connect possibility to reality without strain or rupture. The particle's movement is gentle, intentional, yet almost imperceptible. In your mind, you follow its path like tracing a feather carried by a light wind. You notice how effortless it seems, even though the underlying mathematics of the universe is exacting. Precision and gentleness coexist here, teaching you that the quietest passages can be the most profound. You begin to sense how this principle unfolds across scales. In the nuclei of atoms, particles tunnel through energy barriers to fuse, creating the light of distant stars. In the spaces between molecules, electrons slip quietly into new configurations, allowing life itself to flourish. Every fleeting borrowed moment contributes to the unfolding of the cosmos. You feel as though you are floating alongside these invisible travelers, witnessing the choreography of impermanence and grace. Each tiny movement resonates with your own breath, your own awareness, forming a bridge between the abstract world of probabilities and the intimate rhythm of your body. Time continues to feel soft, expanding around these borrowed moments. You notice that a single particle's brief excursion could influence another, like a small wave nudging a leaf floating downstream. These subtle interactions, though invisible to the naked eye, ripple outward, shaping larger structures over time. You imagine the universe humming quietly with these gentle exchanges, a symphony of soft, transient motions. You rest into the thought that even the most fleeting action has consequence, and yet consequence is not always loud or immediate. Some effects are felt only in the slow unfolding of the larger whole. The universe, you realize, is not stingy with these allowances. It gives particles permission to step into impossible spaces, to borrow energy without guilt, to dance in places that logic alone would forbid. And you feel the reflection of this generosity within yourself. There are moments in your own life, brief instants of clarity or courage, where you move beyond what seemed possible. You sense a kinship with these particles, a quiet understanding that your own leaps, no matter how small or transient, are part of the same cosmic rhythm. You let your mind wander to the edges of this borrowed space, noticing how probability itself seems to pulse like a heartbeat. A particle exists in a cloud of possibilities, a faint glow stretching through a landscape that shifts subtly with every measurement. You imagine yourself stepping into this cloud, allowing your awareness to mingle with the gentle waves of potential. Here, there is no hurry, no pressure. Only presence. Only the soft unfolding of moments that appear, influence, and vanish, leaving space for the next to emerge. And in this quiet understanding, you rest. You see how every particle, every borrowed breath of energy, every flicker of possibility contributes to the vast tapestry of reality. You feel the echoes of these exchanges vibrating in your body, in the slow rhythm of your lungs, in the pulse of your heart. Each moment, though fleeting, carries weight not in force or volume, but in the subtle shaping of what follows. You imagine yourself suspended in this gentle ocean of energy and time, carried by the soft currents of possibility. You breathe deeply, feeling the calm assurance that the universe is both precise and generous. That even the smallest gestures, the briefest borrowings of energy, are meaningful. You sense the continuity of these tiny passages, the quiet succession of arrivals and departures, and you begin to see the interconnectedness of it all. Particles, moments, lives, each influenced by the other, each shaped by fleeting allowances. You rest here, in this awareness, feeling the soft weight of infinity in the gentle folds of the present. Finally, your thoughts drift toward the future, toward the next ripple that has not yet appeared. You imagine the particles waiting, poised for the moment they will borrow energy again. And you, too, are poised in quiet curiosity, in gentle presence, in the patient observation of possibility. You exhale, and as your awareness widens, you realize that every borrowed moment is also returned, leaving space for the next miracle, the next quiet unfolding. You rest, carrying with you the serene understanding that the universe's generosity is endless, and that even the tiniest flickers of presence are enough to light the cosmos from within. You begin by closing your eyes, imagining yourself shrinking once again, small enough to drift beside the particles at the center of a star. The night sky stretches above you, infinite and still, and each twinkle becomes a story of improbable journeys, of quiet crossings that defy expectation. You imagine the core of a star as a vast, dense ocean, where every particle is pressed close to its neighbors, moving with purpose yet dancing to rhythms too subtle to perceive. Here, in this intense stillness, something miraculous unfolds. Particles find their way through barriers that, by ordinary rules, should have stopped them entirely. At the heart of a star, protons, usually repelling one another with stubborn force, must meet to create fusion. It is a delicate, improbable act. Classical physics would suggest it is nearly impossible for them to overcome the electromagnetic walls that separate them. And yet, through the gentle art of quantum tunneling, they slip past. They borrow energy in the quietest way, passing through barriers without shattering them, allowing fusion to take place. You sense the grace in this process, the way impossibility itself becomes a pathway, a soft invitation to create light. You drift closer, feeling the warmth of the core like a slow, pervasive hum that vibrates not only through space but through your very perception. Protons collide and merge, forming helium, releasing energy that will eventually escape the star and reach you across unimaginable distances. You imagine tracing one photon, born of this tender crossing, traveling for millions of years before brushing your skin. Every star, every twinkle above, is evidence that the universe trusts softness, that it allows improbabilities to blossom into brilliance. You notice the gentle interplay of chance and necessity. Particles do not rush. They do not push or demand. They exist in states of probability, hovering near each other in the dense, glowing sea of plasma. And yet, in this suspension, the rules of quantum mechanics permit the occasional tunneling, a brief crossing that initiates a chain reaction. You can feel the tension between stillness and motion, the subtle push and pull of energy and possibility. It is like watching a slow dance where every step is invisible, yet perfectly timed. As you float in this stellar hush, you begin to appreciate the quiet courage of these tiny travelers. Each proton, each electron, faces the prospect of a barrier that seems insurmountable. And yet, by existing as waves of probability, they create their own opportunities to meet and merge. You imagine your own moments of doubt and hesitation reflected in these particles. You realize that sometimes the greatest acts of creation are those that seem most unlikely, those that happen gently, almost without notice, in the quiet spaces where possibility lingers. The energy released by these crossings radiates outward, slow at first, then fast, spreading through layers of the star and eventually escaping as light. You watch it move, a soft pulse traveling through the plasma, carrying warmth and brilliance outward. It is a pulse that has traveled millions of years, and yet it reaches you now, a quiet reminder that the universe allows small miracles to unfold patiently, persistently. You rest into this idea, feeling your own patience lengthen, your awareness deepen, your breath harmonizing with the slow rhythm of stellar creation. You imagine floating among the layers of the star, where temperatures reach millions of degrees, where matter is so dense it seems almost solid, yet within this intensity there is softness, subtlety, and space for possibility. You picture the particles tunneling through barriers, slipping into new configurations without a crash, without a jolt. They move as though gliding on currents invisible to your eyes, guided by the rules of probability that are firm, yet flexible enough to allow the improbable to happen. You breathe slowly, letting the warmth of understanding sink into you. Time seems to behave differently here. Millions of years can pass in the space of a few breaths as you drift beside these stellar crossings. You notice that even the smallest, briefest act, a single proton tunneling through its barrier, has repercussions that echo across the cosmos. Every photon, every wave of energy, is a testament to these improbable acts of quiet bravery. You sense that the stars themselves are composed not just of matter and energy, but of persistence, patience, and the subtle trust that impossibility can become real. You imagine the night sky as a tapestry of these moments, each star a punctuation mark of soft defiance against the harsh rules of classical expectation. You realize that brilliance is often born in the hush between obstacles, in the spaces where tension and probability meet. It is not force that makes the stars shine, but the careful, tender unfolding of possibility. Each light you see is the product of countless tiny crossings, countless moments where particles borrowed energy and returned it, where improbability became reality. You drift closer, closer still, until you feel the pulse of the star as though it were your own heartbeat. You imagine the photons leaving its core, traveling for light years, carrying the imprint of every quantum leap, every gentle crossing that allowed the star to shine. You rest with the awareness that the universe is patient. That brilliance is not instantaneous. That sometimes the smallest, quietest moments shape the largest, most luminous outcomes. You feel the warmth of this insight settle like a soft glow inside your chest. In this hushed presence, you reflect on your own life. You notice how often your growth, your insight, your breakthroughs have occurred in moments of quiet courage, in gentle, improbable crossings over barriers you once believed insurmountable. The star mirrors these moments, reminding you that light and life are born not from force, but from persistence and possibility, from the subtle generosity of the universe. You breathe deeply, feeling a gentle sense of kinship with the particles, with the stars, with the vast, luminous rhythms of existence. Finally, you drift slightly away, floating beside the star as it pulses softly, sending warmth and light outward. You feel the echo of its quiet crossings in your own awareness, in the slow rise and fall of your chest, in the subtle pull of your thoughts toward wonder. And as you rest beside this star, listening to the universe breathe in pulses of brilliance born from impossibility, you sense the next unfolding story, the gentle choreography inside your own cells, the tunnels and leaps that sustain life itself, waiting for you to follow. You begin by letting your awareness drift inward, returning from the vastness of stars to the intimate world within your own body. You feel your breath rising and falling, slow and steady, like a tide that carries you closer to a universe inside yourself. Beneath the familiar sense of flesh and blood lies a landscape of particles, waves, and gentle probabilities, moving in patterns too subtle to see, yet essential to your life. You imagine shrinking once more, small enough to follow an electron as it begins a quiet journey across the molecules in your cells. Inside a cell, there are proteins and enzymes, folded intricately like soft origami. You picture them as a network of corridors, each passageway a possibility for movement. Electrons move along these structures like travelers slipping through hidden doors. Sometimes they glide easily, guided by energy and attraction. Other times, they face barriers that seem impassable. And yet, through the gentle art of tunneling, they pass. They borrow energy for a fraction of a breath, crossing spaces that would otherwise seem forbidden. They do so without damage, without force, quietly reshaping the flow of life. You breathe slowly, imagining yourself riding along one of these electrons. It moves like a lantern through a dark hallway, slipping through walls that exist only as potential. You feel the hum of energy surrounding it, the delicate pulse of a particle obeying the rules of probability, not the rigid laws of certainty. Each jump, each fleeting crossing, has a purpose. It carries electrons to the sites where chemical reactions occur, where molecules are transformed, where life continues. You sense the elegance of these invisible dances, each moment both necessary and improbable. Your awareness drifts to the mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells, where electrons travel along chains like quiet messengers. Each leap contributes to the creation of ATP, the molecule that fuels every heartbeat, every thought, every flicker of awareness. You imagine this energy as a gentle stream, flowing through channels built by evolution, guided by the soft mathematics of quantum mechanics. The electrons do not force their way. They do not collide violently. They move as though the cell itself breathes with them, shaping the environment to allow their passage. You consider the timing of these tiny crossings. Each electron, each quantum leap, happens on a timescale that is imperceptible to your mind. Yet collectively, these moments orchestrate the rhythms of your body. You feel the steady pulse of life unfolding, a choreography of leaps and landings, of barriers crossed without breaking. You imagine every molecule in your cells participating in this gentle pattern, a hidden dance in which each small act contributes to the harmony of the whole. Even the tiniest elements of your being, like the tunneling of electrons and enzymes, affect larger systems. You imagine the chain reaction of these microscopic movements, how a single electron's crossing can influence metabolic pathways, how these pathways feed muscles and nerves, how they sustain thought and sensation. You feel connected to this invisible network, recognizing that your own awareness rides atop countless quiet journeys that are constantly unfolding. Each tunneling event is a soft pulse of life, occurring in silence, shaping the processes that make you feel, move, and exist. You rest with the understanding that life is threaded with these delicate crossings. You, your thoughts, your heartbeat, all are dependent on probabilities realized in the most subtle ways. The universe's generosity, expressed through these quantum allowances, allows existence to continue without disruption, without breakage, without haste. You feel a sense of awe at the precision of these processes, the patient unfolding of life at its most fundamental level. It is not the dramatic leaps that sustain life, but the quiet, repeated acts that no one sees. You imagine how many tumbling events occur within you each second, an uncountable number, rippling through the architecture of cells, across molecules, inside proteins. They are as constant as your breath, yet invisible, unnoticed, yet essential. You sense the harmony of these acts, a soft underlying rhythm that maintains the pulse of life. The electrons slip through potential barriers, allowing chemistry to proceed, allowing energy to flow, allowing you to exist as the observer of your own thoughts and sensations. As you follow one electron on its brief journey, you notice how the cell adapts around it, how the energy landscape bends gently to guide the path of possibility. You feel that same adaptability in yourself, moments when you encounter barriers, when you face difficulty, when the path seems blocked. Sometimes, you are surprised to find that passage is possible, that persistence is rewarded, that subtle shifts allow movement where none seemed possible. The tumbling electron becomes a mirror for your own quiet crossings, your own soft transformations. You rest in this awareness, letting the rhythm of your inner universe settle around you. Each electron, each quantum leap, is a testament to the patient generosity of the cosmos, and to the delicate trust it places in life itself. You imagine yourself floating within this intricate network, carried along by the currents of possibility. And as you breathe slowly, you feel a quiet gratitude for these countless, imperceptible crossings that make every heartbeat, every thought, and every breath possible. Finally, your attention drifts toward the vast number of unseen pathways within your cells. You sense the infinite network of tunnels that supports life, the hidden choreography beneath every action. And in the hush of this inner world, you wonder how many such tunnels are unfolding in you, at this very moment, carrying electrons, carrying energy, carrying the quiet pulse of existence, shaping the miracle of life without ever drawing attention to themselves. You rest in that question, letting the curiosity float gently, like a tiny particle ready to cross into the next impossible space. You begin by letting your awareness drift from the intimate world of your cells into the broader landscape of probabilities that underlie everything. You feel yourself shrinking once more, small enough to move alongside a single particle, a tiny traveler poised at the edge of possibility. Here, walls and barriers exist, but they are not rigid. They are softened by the gentle mathematics of probability, rising and falling like waves on a calm ocean. You sense that in this space, nothing is truly fixed, every position is a suggestion, every movement a potential, a quiet invitation to explore. The particle hovers, uncertain. It does not decide as you or I might. It is not weighed down by choice or intention. Instead, it is guided by the amplitude of probability waves, by a landscape of numbers that describe where it might be. You imagine these waves as ripples in a serene pond, rising gently, colliding softly, retreating, and then returning again. In the spaces where the ripples combine, the particle is most likely to emerge. You breathe in, letting yourself rest in the rhythm of this unseen tide. There is no rush here. Time flows differently in the world of probabilities. It bends, stretches, and folds back on itself in ways that feel natural when you let your mind quiet. You drift along with the particle as it begins to explore this landscape. You notice how even when a barrier seems high, even when energy appears insufficient, the mathematics allows for an escape, a crossing, a tunnel. The particle's path is not magic, it is not a whim of chance. It is a gentle unfolding of possibilities, each one encoded in the structure of the universe. You watch as it slips through, not by force, but by following the soft contours of probability. The crossing happens quietly, imperceptibly, leaving no mark, yet shaping the world in ways that are profound. As you float beside it, you sense the universe speaking in the language of patterns and likelihoods. Probability waves overlap and interfere, creating regions where the particle's presence is favored and others where it is unlikely. You imagine the waves as a field of soft light, dim and bright in gentle oscillations, mapping out the invisible corridors through which the particle may travel. The guidance is not imposed, it emerges naturally from the structure of the world. You feel the elegance of this system, the comfort of knowing that the universe is both precise and flexible, orderly yet forgiving. You begin to notice parallels with your own life. Just as the particle moves where probability allows, you often find yourself drawn toward outcomes shaped by subtle forces, invisible currents of circumstance, intuition, and timing. Sometimes, the path seems closed, impassable. And yet, quietly, opportunities emerge where none seemed possible. You realize that life, too, is a landscape of probabilities, and that moving with gentle awareness can reveal pathways hidden beneath the apparent solidity of obstacles. The particle continues its journey, tracing arcs through the landscape of possibility. It does not rush, does not strain, does not compete. It moves in harmony with the soft rhythms of the quantum world, guided by the mathematics that underlie existence. You feel your own awareness aligning with this rhythm, your breath sinking to the ebb and flow of probabilities, your mind quieting into the steady pulse of potential. There is a sense of ease here, a feeling that being present allows you to witness patterns without the pressure to intervene. You begin to rest into the gentle unfolding of the unseen. You notice that probability waves are not static. They fluctuate, overlap, and create interference patterns. In some regions, the particle's presence is amplified, in others, it diminishes. You imagine moving through this landscape, observing the rise and fall of likelihoods as if floating above a soft ocean of light. Every peak represents a place the particle may emerge, every trough represents a space where it is less likely to go. And yet, nothing is forbidden. Every place exists in potential, even if the chances are slight. You sense that life itself is composed of such gradients, and that small shifts can reveal new possibilities where none were apparent before. You breathe slowly, imagining the particle tunneling through an obstacle that seems insurmountable. It emerges on the other side, not by force but by following the gentle contours of probability, a path quietly made available by the universe itself. You sense that each of your own choices, each subtle action, carries echoes of this principle. Sometimes progress is not about pushing harder, but about noticing the spaces where the probability of success already exists, where gentle alignment allows crossing without struggle. You feel comfort in this understanding, a soft reassurance that obstacles may conceal opportunities for passage. As you drift further, the waves of probability rise and fall around you in infinite patterns. You sense that every particle, every interaction, is part of this vast choreography, each crossing a subtle contribution to the unfolding of reality. You begin to notice the interconnectedness of all these moments, the way one improbable act may influence countless others. Probability is not chaos, it is the quiet architecture of possibility. You rest in this realization, letting your mind expand into the flowing landscape of potential, feeling the soft pulse of the universe guiding every step. You imagine yourself becoming part of this landscape, your awareness merging with the rhythm of possibility. Every breath, every thought, every quiet action you take carries echoes of these probabilities. You sense the beauty in the uncertainty, the elegance in the impermanence, the gentle logic in the seemingly impossible. And as you float within this ocean of probability waves, you begin to wonder where your own possibilities are unfolding, which paths you may cross, which barriers you may slip through, and how the quiet guidance of the universe is shaping the trajectory of your life. Finally, you rest, suspended in the gentle tide of probability, feeling the calm assurance that even the smallest fluctuations carry meaning. The particle has found its way, it has crossed the imperceptible. And you, too, are poised at the edge of unseen paths, quietly observing, breathing with the rhythm of possibility, ready to step where the universe has softly opened the way. You exhale, letting curiosity carry you toward the next unfolding story. The world is a permeable, flexible place, where walls are suggestions and boundaries whisper rather than command. You begin by imagining yourself drifting outward from the intimate landscapes of your cells and the dense cores of stars, moving across space and time. The universe stretches endlessly around you, vast and luminous, yet intimate in its quiet connections. You feel yourself small, yet attuned to the rhythms of a cosmos in which nothing is as fixed as it seems. Even the seemingly most rigid boundaries, walls, barriers, separations, are permeable, softened by the gentle allowances of quantum mechanics. You breathe slowly, feeling the expansiveness of this truth, letting it settle like a light warmth along your spine. From this vantage, you can see the way quantum tunneling extends beyond the microscopic. You imagine particles slipping through barriers in ways that shape entire systems. Radiation streams through walls of atoms in the quiet of deep space. Chemical reactions occur not because of brute force, but because the universe has allowed possibilities to unfold across improbable paths. You picture a photon navigating a lattice of molecules, a proton tunneling through a barrier it should never cross, electrons dancing lightly along unexpected paths, all contributing to a universe in constant soft rearrangement. You feel the elegance of scale, how events at the tiniest levels ripple outward to influence the largest. A single tunneling event in the heart of a distant star might eventually release a photon that travels for thousands, millions, or even billions of years to reach a planet, touching life there in ways imperceptible yet profound. The cosmos itself becomes a soft, permeable fabric, threads of possibility woven through the vast distances, carrying with them subtle change. You drift through this understanding like a leaf on a slow, invisible current, sensing that every particle, every crossing, has its place in the quiet choreography of existence. Walls, both literal and figurative, take on new meaning. They are no longer rigid obstacles but gentle suggestions, regions where motion is less likely, but never forbidden. You imagine the universe as a porous landscape, where boundaries are defined by probability rather than certainty. Particles pass through with quiet grace, reshaping the space around them without violence, without struggle. You feel this idea expand into your awareness, like a soft light illuminating the notion that not all limits are absolute, that permeability is a principle woven deeply into the fabric of reality. You watch a particle approach a wall, and you sense the anticipation, the gentle tension of probability. The wall seems insurmountable from a classical perspective, yet the particle slips through, borrowing energy, passing into the other side, leaving a whisper of its passage behind. You notice how subtle and precise this movement is. There is no crashing, no tearing, only quiet possibility unfolding. You sense that the same principle applies on a larger scale, in stars, in galaxies, in the forces that shape entire systems. You feel a slow, deep harmony in the way the universe allows for passage, for crossing, for connection. You let your mind wander outwards still further, imagining cosmic rays traveling across the galaxy, passing through barriers both natural and human-made. You sense the subtle influence of tunneling and chemical reactions that occur in distant molecular clouds, in the processes that create complex molecules, in the slow alchemy of stars and dust. The universe is not rigid, it is alive with permeability, responsive to the small, invisible acts that ripple outward. You feel a sense of wonder at how reality's softness at the tiniest scales influences everything: the shape of galaxies, the chemistry of planets, the emergence of life itself. Time, too, feels permeable in this cosmic perspective. Events that occur across vast expanses are connected by invisible threads of probability. You imagine a single tunneling event in a stellar core, a proton crossing a barrier in perfect accordance with quantum rules, sending energy outward that eventually shapes the conditions for planets to form. You sense that time is not a line but a gentle weave, threads of cause and effect entwined across eons, guided by both law and possibility. You breathe into this thought, feeling your own life as a small part of this intricate, permeable tapestry. You consider how this principle might extend beyond physical walls to the boundaries in your own life. Just as a particle finds a path where none seemed available, you sense that your mind, your body, and your relationships may also navigate subtle openings. Boundaries, challenges, and obstacles are softened by patience, by gentle awareness, by the hidden allowances that the universe provides. You imagine your own possibilities shifting, as if walls around you were made of probabilities rather than rigid rules. You feel calm knowing that even when a path seems blocked, the universe holds room for quiet passage, for small acts of crossing, for soft transformations. You float above entire galaxies in your imagination, observing the stars, clouds of gas, and distant planets. You see the universe as a place of exchange, of permeability, where energy, matter, and information pass through apparent barriers in ways that are subtle and precise. You notice the gentle, rhythmic flows of cosmic radiation, the faint tunnels that allow particles to traverse barriers across unimaginable distances. The cosmos is alive with these quiet passages, and you sense that you, too, are a part of this pattern, your body and mind threads woven into the permeable fabric of existence. You feel the connections multiply. A tunneling particle in a distant nebula influences the formation of molecules that eventually seed planets. Those molecules contribute to the chemistry of life. Life develops, evolves, and grows. And here you are, drifting through the universe, aware of these soft connections, noticing how each small, imperceptible crossing contributes to the grand pattern. You feel a calm understanding that reality is flexible, permeable, and responsive. Even the smallest act, a thought, a breath, a quantum leap, may ripple outward in ways unseen but significant. You pause and take a deep breath, sensing the quiet poetry in the structure of reality. You notice how permeability, so fundamental to the universe, is mirrored in your own experiences. Opportunities, encounters, and insights may appear where you least expect them, passing through barriers that once seemed rigid. You feel the gentle reassurance that life itself, like the universe, is made of interconnected, permeable pathways. There is room to move, to grow, to shift, and to discover. You imagine reaching out, not with hands but with awareness, into the soft boundaries of your own life. You sense the permeability of relationships, of thoughts, of decisions. Walls become less imposing. Obstacles become suggestions. You feel the subtle currents of possibility guiding you toward pathways you may not have recognized before. The universe has trained you, quietly and patiently, in the gentle art of passage. Every particle that tunneled, every photon that passed through, every improbable crossing has prepared the way for your own movement. As you drift among the cosmic landscape, you see countless instances of tunneling and passage, each one a reminder that the universe is not rigid but fluid, not fixed but flexible. You feel the harmony of this realization, the serenity that comes from understanding that boundaries are not always walls, but opportunities for soft movement, for graceful transformation. You exhale and feel your mind expand into this permeable reality, sensing the soft rhythm of possibility in every corner of existence. Finally, you return to yourself, carrying the knowledge that the universe's permeability is mirrored in your own life. Every barrier you encounter may be permeable, every limitation a suggestion, every impossible-seeming wall a path waiting to be revealed. You rest in this awareness, feeling the quiet pulse of the cosmos within you, and you wonder what permeable boundaries exist in your own life, waiting for the softest, most subtle act to pass through, to cross, to unfold into new possibility. You begin by taking a slow, deep breath, letting your mind and body settle into a gentle rhythm. You feel the layers of experience from the chapters you have traveled through, from the soft edges of walls at the quantum scale, to the improbable crossings inside stars, to the tunnels within your own cells, all blending into a calm, luminous awareness. Each crossing, each leap, each moment of possibility has been a soft whisper from the universe, teaching patience, presence, and the art of moving gently through what seems insurmountable. You imagine a particle, drifting quietly in a space where probability and reality overlap. It faces a barrier, not rigid, not demanding, but present as a suggestion. You watch as it moves slowly, as though testing the space, as though listening to the subtle cues of the environment. Then, almost imperceptibly, it slips through. There is no force, no crash, only a soft, deliberate act that transforms the impossible into the real. You realize that every crossing you have witnessed in stars, in cells, in cosmic radiation follows this same gentle principle. The universe allows passage for those who move with awareness, patience, and openness. You feel yourself becoming part of this rhythm. Your thoughts drift in and out like particles testing the contours of possibility. You notice the soft interplay of certainty and uncertainty, the gentle pulse of potential guiding your attention. You imagine your own challenges, your own walls, and you sense that they are permeable, waiting for the quietest, most attentive action. You are invited to witness this without force, to move with a rhythm that is slow, patient, and deeply aligned with the subtle currents of life. In this space, you observe the patterns of tunneling once more. Electrons slipping through protein channels, protons merging in the core of a star, photons traveling across light years of vacuum, each as a quiet meditation in motion, an embodiment of patience and trust. You notice how the soft persistence of each particle, each wave of probability, carries the universe forward. You sense that your own life, too, is a series of gentle crossings, moments where the improbable becomes possible when approached with care, awareness, and presence. You imagine floating between stars and molecules, across vast distances and intimate spaces, feeling the thread of continuity that links every scale of the universe. You sense how the microscopic shapes the macroscopic, and how each small, delicate crossing contributes to a pattern far greater than any single act. You feel the same principle at work within yourself. Every decision, every moment of attention, every act of noticing creates subtle shifts that ripple outward. You breathe in slowly, letting this awareness deepen, settling into your body as warmth, as calm, as quiet confidence in the flow of life. The universe, you realize, does not demand that you force your way through barriers. It does not require that you rush or strain. Instead, it offers passage through awareness, presence, and patience. You imagine the soft energy of the cosmos guiding you, as if every improbability, every challenge, every wall has already begun to yield to gentle possibility. You feel the same rhythm in your own breath, in the slow pulse of your heartbeat, in the quiet unfolding of your thoughts. Each act of noticing, each gentle step forward, is a crossing in its own right, a contribution to the harmony of existence. You let your mind rest on the metaphor of tunneling as a guide for life. You imagine yourself approaching challenges with the soft patience of a particle, aware of possibilities that may not be visible at first, sensing the subtle fluctuations of probability that guide the way. You feel that solutions, insights, and opportunities emerge not from force, but from alignment, from attention, from gentle persistence. The barriers you face are not walls to batter, they are invitations to move delicately, to explore the edges, to trust in the rhythms of possibility. You visualize the night sky one last time, every star a beacon of improbable crossing, every glimmer a reminder of what patience and gentle persistence can achieve. You notice the tunnels inside yourself, the microscopic leaps that sustain life, the quiet pathways through which energy flows, shaping everything you are. You sense the soft poetry in all of it, a universe that is patient, generous, and responsive, and a life that is threaded with the same qualities, carrying you through your own subtle crossings with grace and trust. You feel the connection deepen, the awareness that the universe and your own inner world are mirrors of one another. Every particle, every photon, every electron teaches the same lesson: movement, creation, and transformation happen not by force, but by alignment with the soft rhythms of possibility. You rest in this reflection, letting it soak into your mind and body, letting it become a gentle hum in your awareness. The world, both vast and intimate, is filled with permeable boundaries, subtle opportunities, and quiet passages waiting for your attention. You imagine stepping through one of these passages yourself, without hurry, without strain, but with gentle trust. You feel the soft energy of the universe supporting the movement, carrying you through the improbable with ease. You sense that life itself is composed of these crossings, moments of uncertainty made tangible, barriers softened by patience, improbabilities realized through quiet alignment. You breathe deeply, feeling gratitude for the countless unseen paths that have carried you here, and the innumerable possibilities waiting ahead. Finally, you rest, suspended in the awareness of possibility. You feel the rhythm of your breath matching the rhythm of the universe. You feel the pulse of life echoing in the soft crossings within yourself, in the stars, in the cosmic web, in every gentle tunneling that has shaped existence. You do not need to solve, to rush, or to force. You only need to be present, to notice, to move with care, to step softly into the spaces that the universe has already opened. You imagine a door before you, simple, unadorned, quietly waiting. You do not know what lies beyond it, yet you sense that stepping through will continue the gentle journey of crossing, of alignment, of possibility. You rest with the door in your awareness, allowing curiosity to soften into calm expectation. You do not need to hurry. You do not need to understand fully. You only need to notice the space, the subtle opening, the quiet pulse of potential, and allow yourself to follow where it leads. The universe, in its infinite patience, has offered this one truth: all crossings, all passages, all transformations, whether in the heart of a star, in the tunneling electron of your cells, or in the hidden folds of probability, are gentle invitations. They are reminders that possibility exists in every space where awareness meets attention, where patience meets alignment, where the improbable can become real. You feel your mind soften into this understanding, your body relax, your thoughts drift like particles slipping through a barrier. And as you rest in this gentle space, suspended between what is known and what is possible, you sense the slow, quiet pulse of life and the universe guiding you forward. You breathe, noticing the rhythm, trusting the soft unfolding, and imagine yourself stepping through the door, ready for the next quiet journey, ready to follow the gentle art of crossing wherever it may lead.